It's time to get schooled by the teen sensation of true crime.
Here's our resident boy genius with this week's Sidebar.
Hi, my name is Ryan Kester. I'm an 18-year-old pre-law junior at the University of Texas at Dallas, and ever since I was 9 years old, I've been researching cases, attending trials, and poring over hundreds of thousands of pages of court and police documents, all in the name of true crime. On today's episode of Sidebar, we're going to be discussing a topic that is a little bit more of a hypothetical than something that we might actually see: secondary murder charges. So today's case is the case of Bernita White, which, as you learned, unfortunately, upon hearing of her daughter's death, Bernita's mother, Barbara, passed away after succumbing to a heart attack. So the question posed would be, could the person who murdered Bernita also face criminal or civil charges against them for the death of Barbara? Could they be found responsible? I think that it's easier to explain this from a wide point of view and narrow it down to the specific case. Homicide, which is the act of another human's life being taken, that's the legal definition of it, can be categorized three general ways in the system. Number one, what we all think of when we talk about true crime, is murder. That's the act of intentionally taking another person's life. A key element of murder in almost every state is that you have to have malice and a forethought. That doesn't necessarily mean premeditation in the traditional sense of thinking it out. Rather, you have to consciously desire to take their life without any sort of provocation or reason behind it. Not a motive, but manslaughter, for instance, which would be the second classification, is where you recklessly take a person's life or with adequate provocation. The common example would be walking in on your spouse cheating on you. You might be able to assert the defense that it wasn't murder, it was manslaughter, because there was an adequate provocation. There was that was a reasonable, somewhat reasonable response to a very shocking situation. Not necessarily reasonable again, but understandable almost. The third and lesser known category would be criminally negligent homicide, which is where there's no intent, there's no conscious desire to take a life, but it happens as a result of an extreme negligence, one that can't be excused. So looking at these examples, the death of Barbara unfortunately doesn't fit into any of them. Murder, there's not an intent to take Barbara's life. There might be an intent to take Bernita's, but the prosecution couldn't assert that they also intended to kill Barbara. Manslaughter, there's not an adequate provocation, and even looking at it from an involuntary perspective, you couldn't consciously realize that there was a risk there to take the life of another person. Bernita, again, yes, but not Barbara. The person who committed the murder would have no way of knowing that that would also cause the death of Barbara. So looking at it from a criminally negligent point of view, again, in my opinion, I just don't see a prosecutor being able to prove that, because not only would you have to prove that there was some knowledge or risk that this would cause the death of Barbara, you would have to prove that this did cause the death of Barbara, which unfortunately, as I do believe it's possible to die from a broken heart, the stress of the murder is simply not enough to rise to the element of criminal charges, if that makes sense. It's a very sad case, but it's not likely one that would see the inside of a courtroom. On that note, I do have to get back to writing my paper, but I'll see you guys next time for the next episode of Sidebar.